I'd always thought of my son as my rock. From the moment he was born, I gave him everything I had, my time, my love, my patience. I poured my heart into raising him, hoping he'd grow up to be someone who valued family above all else. But that was before I overheard the conversation. It was an ordinary Wednesday, just like any other. I was sitting in my cozy living room, the faint scent of lavender cleaning spray lingering in the air as I wiped down the furniture. The house was always spotless, just the way I liked it. There was something soothing about cleanliness, the act of tidying up chaos into order. But today, it felt different. The house, for the first time, felt empty. I wasn't sure what it was, but there was an odd, subtle tension hanging in the air, a feeling I couldn't shake, like a storm was brewing just beyond the horizon. My son, Tim, had been distant lately. He'd stop by less often, his calls growing shorter. My daughter-in-law, Rachel, never looked me in the eye when she came over. It was almost as if they were avoiding me. But why? What had I done? The answer came one evening, as I was sitting in the kitchen, quietly sipping on a cup of chamomile tea. The walls of our home were thick, and I was used to hearing muffled sounds of conversation from Tim's office upstairs. But tonight, something was different. I was just about to reach for my phone when I heard his voice, but not the tone I knew. This wasn't the cheerful, loving Tim I'd raised. No, this was something darker. "Yeah, I'll take care of it," he said, his voice low, almost conspiratorial. "She's been getting worse, and if she keeps pushing me like this, I don't think there's any other choice. I'll get her committed. She won't see it coming. Then, the house will be mine. Rachel can't wait to move in, you know. She's already picking out furniture." I froze. My heart stopped for a spaltikia. It seconded, then raced to catch up with the wave of horror that flooded over me. Commit me? The man I raised, the son I loved, was plotting to have me committed, to take away my home, my life, my dignity. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't even process the words. It felt like the room had suddenly gotten smaller, the air thicker. My hands shook as I gripped the edge of the kitchen counter, the porcelain mug almost slipping from my grasp. I didn't dare move. I just listened, like a fly caught in a web, unable to escape the slow, suffocating realization that my son, my flesh and blood, was plotting against me. "Once she's gone," he continued, "Rachel and I can finally have what's ours. We've been waiting too long." The venom in his words sent a chill through me. This was no longer about money or property. This was about control, about stripping me of everything I'd worked for, everything I held dear. I'd spent years giving him everything, my savings, my support, my time, and this was how he repaid me? I couldn't breathe. I thought about the years of memories, the birthday parties, the sleepless nights when he was sick, the countless sacrifices, and this is how he saw me? A burden, a source of income, something to be discarded for a bigger, better life with Rachel. I'd heard whispers over the years that she wasn't as innocent as she appeared, but I never wanted to believe it. She'd always been charming, sweet, the picture-perfect daughter-in-law, but now I saw her for what she truly was, a gold digger, using Tim as her ticket to a life of luxury. As their conversation continued, I felt a burning anger rise within me. It wasn't just the betrayal that stung. It was the audacity, the sheer nerve of it. How could he think he could do this to me? I needed to do something. But what? I couldn't just sit back and let him tear apart everything I'd built. This was my home, my life. I wasn't going to let them take it away without a fight. But how could I outsmart my son? How could I turn the tables on the very person I thought I could trust more than anyone? That night, after Tim and Rachel went to bed, I lay awake in my room, staring at the ceiling, trying to calm the storm inside me. My mind raced with thoughts of what to do next, but one thing was clear. I had to act fast. The window was closing. I needed to beat him to his plan. Tomorrow, I would make my move, but it wasn't going to be what he expected. I wasn't going to beg, cry, or plead. No, I was going to take control. As I finally drifted off to sleep, a new resolve settled in my chest. I would outwit them. I would take everything from under their noses, and they would never see it coming. The next morning, I woke up before the sun. I didn't sleep much, but I didn't need to. Something in me had shifted during the night. I wasn't just a mother anymore. I wasn't a victim. I was a woman with a plan, and I would carry it out with the same quiet determination that had gotten me through a lifetime of sacrifice. I made myself a strong pot of coffee, black, no sugar. The bitterness felt fitting. As I stood by the kitchen window, watching the faint outlines of dawn creep across the yard, I mentally laid out my next moves. First, I gathered my paperwork. I kept all my important documents in a locked drawer in my sewing room: title deed, bank records, power of attorney documents, old wills, even the paperwork from when I refinanced the house 3 years ago to help Tim pay off his business loans. That was $62,000 gone, just like that. He never paid me back. Of course, back then, I never asked him to. Stupid. I know that now. I made a full inventory of what I owned and what was in my name. The house was mine, paid off in full 12 years ago after my husband passed. Every single monthly payment made on time, $1,173.89 a month for 28 years. I never missed one. And now my son thought he could just take it? Not on my watch. I called a lawyer. Not one of those fancy ones in the city. I remembered Mr. Halverson, the one who helped us with the estate after my husband died. Kind man, honest, probably in his 70s by now, but still sharp as a tack. He picked up on the third ring. "Clara, I haven't heard from you in years," he said. His voice was warm but curious. "Everything all right?" I didn't give him the whole story. Not yet. Just that I wanted to make some changes to my estate plan and needed to come in. He offered me a 2 p.m. slot that same day. I accepted. I hung up and took a deep breath. That was step 1. Next, I made 2 calls that would seem innocent to anyone else. The first was to an old friend, Deborah, who lived out in Fairview, about 90 minutes away. We hadn't talked much in recent years, but when I told her I was thinking of visiting for a while, her voice lit up like a Christmas tree. "You know you're always welcome here," she said. "The guest room is yours." Perfect. The second call was to the realtor who had sold us our house back in 1985, a woman named Mary Ann, now semi-retired but still licensed. I left her a voicemail saying I needed a discreet consultation. I didn't say why. I didn't need to. By noon, I had everything I needed in a manila folder: deed copy, financial statements, ID, power of attorney, which, by the way, was still in my name, and a rough draft of a new will I'd written myself late last night. No more vague promises. No more, "Everything goes to Tim when I pass." No, those days were over. I got into my car, that old maroon Toyota Camry with the dented side mirror Tim kept promising to fix. It still ran fine. On the way to Mr. Halverson's office, I passed the bakery where I used to buy Tim cupcakes for his birthday. I almost laughed. I used to spend hours making sure his special day was perfect. Once, I stayed up until 3 a.m. sewing him a pirate costume for a party he barely remembers. But I remember. I remember everything. At the lawyer's office, I laid it all out. I told Mr. Halverson I wanted to sign the house over, not to my son, but to a living trust with me as the sole trustee. I wanted to appoint an irrevocable beneficiary, Deborah's daughter, who's always been kind to me, as strange as that may sound. She once drove 2 hours just to help me set up my email. That's more than I can say for Tim. Mr. Halverson raised an eyebrow, but didn't question it. "You're allowed to do whatever you want with your property," he said. "Are you sure this won't cause problems with your family?" I looked him straight in the eye. "There's no family left to cause problems." He nodded. It took about 2 hours. By the time I walked out, the paperwork was in motion. The house would be out of Tim's reach, permanently. If he tried to contest it later, he'd be told to take it up with the trust, which of course would politely tell him to shove it. But I wasn't done yet. I stopped by the bank next. I had 2 accounts, one checking, one savings. The savings account still had just under $18,500 in it. I transferred the full amount to a new account under the trust's name. I'd planned to give it to Tim eventually, maybe when he had kids. Now, I'd rather burn it in front of him. I got home just before dinner. Rachel was in the kitchen, rummaging through the fridge like she owned the place. She barely looked up. "Hey, Clara," she said. "We're gonna have some friends over this weekend." Hope that's okay. I smiled politely. Of course. I won't be here. She blinked. Oh? Where are you going? Just a little trip. Some peace and quiet. I've earned it. Rachel shrugged and went back to rearranging my leftovers. I watched her. The audacity. The entitlement. She was already measuring for new curtains in her head, I could tell. Probably had a vision board tucked away somewhere full of paint swatches and throw pillows, but she had no idea. That night, as I lay in bed, I started writing a letter. Not to Tim, not to Rachel, but to myself, a kind of final goodbye, to the version of me that was blind, generous to a fault, desperate for love in return. That woman was gone. And the next phase? That would be something else entirely. The day after I signed over the house, I started packing. Just the essentials. Clothes, medication, toiletries, a few photo albums I didn't want to leave behind. Everything else, furniture, dishes, even the antique sewing machine I'd kept for 40 years, I left. Let them see what ownership really meant when there's nothing of mine left inside. I had scheduled my departure for Sunday at 6 a.m. I knew Rachel liked to sleep in, and Tim never moved before coffee. I wasn't going to say goodbye. That would have made it feel like they were losing something. I wanted them to feel confused, then confident, and then crushed. But as with most plans in life, mine hit a snag. It was Friday night, and Tim came home late. I could hear the scrape of his keys at the door while I was in my bedroom folding socks. He wasn't alone. I heard Rachel's heels first, click-click on the tile floor, then the low murmur of their voices carrying down the hallway. I froze when I heard him say it. She's losing it, Rach. I told you, she's been off for months. I made an appointment for next week. The psych evaluation is just a formality. I stood still, listening through the thin walls of this house I paid for. I could hear Rachel laugh, soft and sharp, like broken glass. And then what? She just signs everything over and we move in officially? Tim sighed. We'll ease her into it. But once she's committed, it's ours. Ours. I wanted to burst into the room and scream. I wanted to slap the smugness off both their faces, but I didn't. I stood there, my hands trembling slightly, the warmth draining from my body as the weight of their plans settled over me like a wet blanket. They had it all worked out. They thought I was stupid, weak, confused. But I wasn't confused. I was furious. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. My hands moved calmly, methodically, brushing my teeth, combing my hair, brewing a fresh pot of coffee, the old way I used to like it. As the smell filled the kitchen, I set out 3 mugs, like I used to when Tim was a teenager. I sat at the table and waited. When Tim came down, rubbing the sleep from his eyes, I smiled and said, "Sit, we need to talk." He blinked, surprised, but obeyed. Rachel followed a few minutes later, clearly annoyed at the early hour. She sat with her arms crossed, eyeing me like I might spontaneously combust. I let the silence drag for a bit. Then I started. "I know everything," I said quietly. Tim tilted his head, confused. "Everything what?" "I heard you. The other night. And the night before that. You were going to have me committed." He looked at Rachel, who quickly stood up, hands raised. "Clara, I think you're misunderstanding." "No, I'm not," I interrupted. My voice was calm, measured. "You were going to steal my house, my life, my dignity. You didn't even have the decency to lie creatively." Tim's face turned red. "Mom, we were worried about you. You've been forgetful. You left the stove on last week." "I was making soup," I snapped. "It wasn't even boiling yet." Rachel muttered, "Maybe you should calm down." I laughed, a short, cold laugh. "You don't get to tell me what to do in my own house. Oh, wait." I leaned forward slightly. "That's right. It's not mine anymore." They both froze. "I transferred the deed yesterday. It's in a trust now, protected, locked down. If you try anything legal, you'll find yourselves dealing with lawyers who don't even know your names." Tim's mouth fell open. You did what?" "I moved my savings, set up new beneficiaries, even called the utilities to cancel the auto payments." Rachel's eyes narrowed. "You're bluffing." I stood up and slid a single sheet of paper across the table. Tim picked it up. His eyes scanned the top line, the trust's name, the legal wording. His hands began to tremble. You really think I wouldn't protect myself? I said, almost kindly. I raised you, Tim. I know how your mind works. And Rachel, you should have stayed out of it. You could have had a decent life. Instead, you helped him plan a betrayal. You're being dramatic, Tim muttered. This is insane. You've lost your mind. No, I said, but you're about to lose everything else. They didn't know what to say. The silence stretched out like a chasm. I walked to the hallway and opened the closet, pulling out the small suitcase I'd packed 2 nights ago. My jacket was draped over it. You're leaving? Rachel asked, half in disbelief, half in relief. Yes, I said, grabbing the handle, but not for the reason you think. I turned around, pausing one last time. You'll still be living here for now, but you won't own anything inside these walls. No equity, no future. Just debt, and your own echo to keep you company. And then, for a final jab, I added, oh, and the hot water's been turned off. Might want to check on that. As I walked out the door, I didn't look back. I arrived at Deborah's just before noon. She greeted me at the door with open arms and that familiar scent of cinnamon and warm linen that I remembered from years ago. Her house was small but cozy, a single story with soft beige walls, thick carpet, and a sunroom filled with potted plants and old books. You look like you've been through hell, she said, as she took my suitcase. I have, I replied, but I'm not done yet. We spent the afternoon catching up, but my mind wasn't really on the conversation. It kept drifting back to Tim and Rachel, imagining their faces after I left, the way they must have scrambled through drawers looking for documents that no longer existed, making frantic calls to banks and lawyers, only to hit wall after wall. I turned off my phone after the 5th missed call. All from Tim, no voicemails, just silence, or maybe guilt. Let him stew. By Monday morning, I'd set up a meeting with Mary Ann, the realtor. She met me in Fairview at a quiet cafe with a tablet in hand and a curious smile. I have to admit, I didn't expect this from you, she said. You were always the one baking cookies for open houses, not selling your own home in secret. I'm not selling, I said. Not yet. I'm just making sure it's protected. She nodded, understanding immediately. You want it off the radar. Out of reach. Yes. We spent 2 hours going over zoning, insurance loopholes, and title shielding. By the end of it, I had layers of protection even a seasoned real estate lawyer would need weeks to untangle. The house was now legally occupied by me, but owned by the trust. It couldn't be borrowed against. It couldn't be sold out from under me, and it definitely couldn't be inherited by a greedy son and his social climbing wife without my signature. And they wouldn't be getting that, ever. When I got back to Deborah's, there were 9 missed calls, all Tim S., till no voicemails. Just his name blinking on the screen like a warning light on a dying engine. Then, a text message. What are you doing? Come back. We need to talk. I stared at the message for a long time, the audacity. No apology, no shame, just a command cloaked as concern. The next day, another message. Rachel's upset. She thinks you're having some kind of breakdown. You're making things harder than they need to be. I didn't respond. Instead, I emailed Mr. Halverson to confirm the final processing of the trust documents, all official, all sealed. That night, Deborah poured me a glass of wine, and we sat on her back porch watching the sun set behind the trees. You don't seem angry, she said. I shook my head. Oh, I am, but it's a quiet kind of rage now. Not hot, just steady. She nodded. That's the most dangerous kind. The next morning, the inevitable happened. I got a call from a social worker. Hi, Mrs. Edwards. This is Melanie from Riverstone Adult Services. We received a wellness concern from a family member about your mental health. Would you be open to an evaluation? There it was. They still tried it. I took a deep breath. Melanie, I appreciate the concern, but I'm perfectly well. In fact, I'm at a friend's home, staying voluntarily. I've recently updated all my legal documents, and my attorney can confirm that I am of sound mind and managing my own affairs. There was a pause. Thank you, ma'am. That's all we needed to hear. She never called again. Later that evening, I got another text from Tim. You didn't have to make this ugly. Ugly? As if what he tried to do wasn't grotesque. So I sent him one message, just one. I changed the locks, I changed the title, I changed the will. The only thing left to change was me. And I did. No reply. The silence this time was a gift, but I wasn't finished. I still had one thing left to do. I called the bank where I'd co-signed on Tim's business loan 4 years ago. The loan I'd helped him get approved because his credit was too low and they needed a reliable co-signer. "Mrs. Edwards, how can we assist you today?" the manager asked. "I'd like to formally request a release of liability," I said. "The business is no longer affiliated with me in any way, and I've moved all my assets into a trust. Any financial obligation still linked to my name is a legal liability I can no longer accept." They weren't thrilled, but they couldn't stop it. Tim's business had been limping along for months anyway. I suspected the default was coming, and now it wouldn't touch me. I'd legally separated myself from my son in every way that mattered. Property, finances, health decisions, all that was left was the emotional thread. And that was next. A week passed, then 2. And in that time, not a single word from Tim or Rachel. It was funny. After the chaos, the manipulation, the plotting, all I felt now was quiet. Not peace, not yet, but quiet. Deborah was kind enough to let me stay as long as I needed. We developed a rhythm: morning tea, gardening, grocery trips on Wednesdays. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. But something still lingered in me. Like an unfinished sentence, I could feel it every time I closed my eyes. The last thread I hadn't cut. Because here's the truth no one tells you. When your own child betrays you, you don't stop loving them overnight. You wish you could. You beg yourself to. But the love sticks like sap, even when it's poisoned. So, on a cloudy Thursday afternoon, I wrote Tim a letter. Not because I wanted reconciliation, not because I forgave him, but because I needed to end it properly. In my own words, not his silence. Here's what I wrote. "Tim, I heard everything. I heard you plan to steal the roof over my head. I heard your wife laugh about it. I heard you dismiss me as a burden, a stepping stone to your next upgrade in life. You say I've changed. You're right. I used to be the kind of mother who would have forgiven you, who would have kept quiet to keep the peace, who would have gone along with being evaluated just to hold on to some shred of family. But the woman you raised, the one you taught to be strong, to think ahead, to survive, she woke up. I changed the title. The trust is irrevocable. The will is final. The money is gone. And now, so am I. The next time you visit the house, remember this. You tried to steal something you didn't earn, and I made sure you'll never get it. I hope the echo in that empty house reminds you of who put the walls up in the first place. Mom, I didn't sign it with love. I didn't sign it with hope. I signed it with finality. I had it hand-delivered by a courier service. Signature required. I wanted to make sure he opened it himself. 3 days later, I got a message. "You've destroyed everything." That was it. And to that, I said out loud, sitting alone in Deborah's sunroom with a warm cup of tea in my hands, "No, I saved myself." 3 months later, the house now sits empty. I have Marianne quietly listing it off-market to a buyer who appreciates its history, my history. All proceeds go into the trust, which will one day fund scholarships for women over 60 returning to school. Not a dime will go to Tim. Rachel's already gone, according to mutual acquaintances, packed up and left when she realized there was no inheritance coming. I can't say I'm surprised. As for Tim, I don't know. And I don't care. He's a stranger now, a man who tried to erase me from my own life and failed. And me? I've applied to a part-time course at the local college. I want to study creative writing. Funny, after all these years of keeping quiet, I've discovered I have a lot to say. Deborah jokes that I should write a memoir. Maybe I will. Or maybe I'll just live the rest of my life free. No guilt, no debt, no one hovering over my shoulder, waiting for me to die. I'm not waiting to die anymore. I'm living, and I'll be damned if anyone ever tries to steal that from me again.